So, how was your week?
It's been all right. I mean, it is what it is. But I did get to play this magnificent game.
At least there's that.
Yeah. Wow. What a ride.
Holy fucking shit. Yes, that is exactly the right way to describe it. Like a roller coaster with rockets clumsily strapped to the back. Just a just a big beautiful bitch of a bit of business. Um
That's a nice way to put it.
yeah.
Well, James, we both completed the Final Fantasy VII Remake. No part 1, but clearly part 1. And now we gotta spoil this thing. We gotta talk about it. Because some shit really went down.
That's absolutely right. You probably read online or saw the headlines about how there's a controversial ending that had some fans, talking, and they're right to do so, which is something we're going to get into maybe a little bit later. But I guess we'll, do the ordinary thing and start from the top, where a person would normally begin.
That's usually where we start, and we're also going to start by saying that this is going to spoil everything. It's going to spoil everything. We're going to talk about it all. So if you haven't played the game or you're sensitive to spoilers in any way, you should not listen to this. Just don't.
Yeah, this is your chance. We're going to give you one more quick opportunity to back the fuck out now, beat the game, and then come back, because we're going to get into the meat, potatoes, and the salad. All right, there's nothing being held back.
The salad also has meat on top of it. Like, it was meaty top to bottom.
Yeah. Little couple of pork chops in the dessert plate. Just there's no getting away from it.
Well, you put apples on pork, that makes it dessert.
That's right. That's exactly correct.
Yeah. So let's start with chapter 1, which, I mean, seemingly is the most similar to the original game. It basically follows beat for beat until the very end of that chapter, where it's a little less clear that we're the good guys.
Well, it's interesting because the whole narrative that, oh, maybe Avalanche is the bad people, is something manufactured by Shinra, because I think the bomb was just meant to, like, shut down the reactor, not, like, straight up nuke the fucking thing, which I guess Shinra thought that would make for better press, so that's what they did. And in turn, creating a fun, family-friendly enemy for them to plaster across the fucking vid screens and the news articles and stuff like that to make their campaign of, like, violence and extreme reactions all the more plausible. It's very, very cool of them. Very super cool of Shinra to do what they did.
I also like when the bomb originally blows up, it's just kind of like, it's this tiny little, like, firecracker that does nothing. Like,
Yeah.
Shinra's waiting for it to blow something up, and Heidegger and Shinra are standing there, and they're like, huh?
Just that little noise, like just a crappy little puff of smoke, and it makes you think, because Jessie talks about how maybe she put more power into this one than she should have, and that maybe that's the reason that the thing blew up. And I'm like, what was the original bomb gonna be like? Like, was this just like 6 firecrackers and half a roll of duct tape? Like, what did you put together that you were originally going to use in this reactor, and what did you expect it to do?
I mean, I'm really glad that they latched onto that, because that is a plot point in the original game where she's like, it's my fault that it blew up that way. But they actually turned it into a thing and made it her whole character arc, pretty much, in the remake, which, great use of existing content and fleshing it out. I think this game is an awesome example of building on top of a foundation.
Yeah, whatever we don't incidentally talk about because we forgot or it didn't stand out in our minds enough, just know that it was fleshed out with, like, a quick cut scene, or like an in-depth conversation, or some other form of like exposition dump that didn't feel particularly weighty or stretched out. You get a lot of information without too much like cumbersome maneuvering or mental gymnastics. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, like quick flash forward to the credits where they show clips of basically every cutscene in the game. And I was like, fuck me, a lot happened. A lot happened.
Yeah, it was a great way for them to like get in the enormous amount of names in the credits and just, show off just how much crazy shit actually went down. Super cool.
One thing I noted in the credits is they had like 3,000% more voice actors than I thought.
Holy
there was
shit.
An enormous list.
I was for like a week after the game first came out. Well, I guess it hasn't quite been a week, but like for like the first 5 days or so after the game came out, it's just been like people popping up online, be like, "Hey, I'm super proud to announce that I was voicing in the Final Fantasy VII Remake," and there's like hundreds of people. Like anybody I've ever watched on YouTube was like, "Oh yeah, no, I did a voice. I did one of the bodybuilders." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess y'all were real fucking busy. That's cool."
Did you see that video of the girl who did Aerith's voice watching like her introduction in the game for the first time? Like she's a streamer and streamed it.
Oh, I did not
all
see
tearing
that.
up and stuff.
Oh wow, that's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, I kind of like how they did that. They didn't, cast Troy Baker as Barrett. They casted people who sound like you expect the character to sound like.
Yeah, while still giving that awesome flair that we expect from ridiculous over-the-top video game stories. I'm thinking of like greatest hits from like Capcom or like Square Enix or like Platinum, just like really like bombastic, powerful performances from people who are just having so much fucking fun. And there's a lot of that in the voice acting, and I really, really appreciated that the whole way through.
Yeah, Barrett's voice actor is incredible.
Yeah, he really put in the work.
The swings between going full Mr. T to actually seeming like maybe he is this beacon of hope and he could be a guy that people would follow. He never really got that in the original game, but he has some moments in here where you're going, yeah, Barrett, you got a good head on your shoulders, not just a gun on your arm.
Yeah. Holy cow, the gun on the arm. I appreciated that in this new version of the game. Most of the time when Barrett uses the gun, it has some sort of effect. Because I remember thinking in the original, you see him just like unloading like fucking crazy, just bap, 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 bap. And then watching how it would or would not affect the world around him. You're like, are you just popping off like dummy slugs or like birdshot? Like what is coming out of that gun? I don't understand. If you shot me with that thing, would I like notice? But
Yeah.
but this time around, it looks and feels and acts like a like a fucking gun would. Which, thanks.
Yeah, he takes out some serious hardware with the gun. And, I kind of expected it to just be minimally effective at all times.
No, I actually ended up using Barrett a lot in the last half of the game. Like he was my main man whenever possible. Because like he has that distance and maneuverability, and like his like ATB abilities are really useful, and like you combine that with a little like healing work, and you can just like do like the back row kind of strategy, and I found it extremely effective for most of the second half.
Yeah. I don't know if you found this, but I definitely feel that the AI focuses way more on whatever character you're controlling.
Yes, it's a very effective battle strategy, actually. It's how I beat the final boss, was I would like switch characters constantly so that somebody could cast a spell or like get off a ATB ability without being like immediately annihilated by the boss. And
Yeah.
so I'd switch from character to character like 3 times in 30 seconds. It was the only way to win.
And just to talk about the combat a bit, it is quite diverse. Like all the characters feel substantially different. So you'd have a completely different experience playing this game if you mained Aerith versus Cloud.
Aerith,
Like, just set her up
yeah.
as the leader. I kind of like playing as her, actually.
Well, yeah, because they like made it so all of her attacks are magical, and that like you could boost her magic attack stats pretty easily. And she had her initial ability, like Soul Drain or whatever. You can get it off pretty quickly, and it's actually pretty tough. And there'd be a lot of fights where like the guy was like basically impenetrable, and it'd be like, oh yeah, but what about Soul Drain? And then it would just do 4 to 6 times the damage of what everybody else was doing at the time.
Yeah.
Super handy.
I really like that Ray of Judgment ability, just because it feels
shit.
so good to just light a fool up with that.
So, speaking of Aerith,
Perfect.
Chapter 2, we meet her for the first time, and Cloud goes full PTSD, like, immediately, which, that's cool. They did kind of address this in the original game with, like, you get, like, that high tone, like, almost like tinnitus, and, like, the colors would change for a second. But, and this is important. This, I think, is something that I didn't understand the ramifications of until much later. But Cloud has, like, future vision. Like, right from the jump. Like, right from the fucking jump. He's getting prophetic visions of what's going to happen in the future. And, like, for somebody who's played the original game, having that fucking scene with Aerith, like, alluded to, like, almost immediately was, like, really... just a really interesting direction for them to take with the story.
Yeah, like, at the time in Chapter 2, or wherever that is, I kind of felt like it was going to be, a wink and a nod towards people who'd played the original. But the further you go, the more you see the ramifications of how they've altered the story in some pretty drastic ways.
Yeah. We'll talk about this more a little later, but suffice to say for now, when I started playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, I felt like I knew how the story was going to play out over each installment. Now, I have no fucking idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the big takeaway. That's something we're going to dive into a little later, but the big top bullet point is that we don't know what's going to happen next anymore. We're off the map. So they start alluding to that pretty early on. You get flashes of it starting in Chapter 2, and then you get a drip feed supply of these moments going forward, where you get like flashes of future vision or like tiny little visual Easter eggs that are like, hey, you don't necessarily know how this is going to pan out. And that includes with the whispers, which is something else. That's another thing they introduced in Chapter 2, which, again, are a huge deal that I didn't quite grasp the implications of immediately. But, like, slowly you're like, oh, this is actually pretty fucking significant.
Yeah, I mean, originally I just assumed they were, oh, this is some gameplay bullshit to make sure I don't go to a place I'm going to end up later and, break a script or something. But, yeah, I think it's a really interesting direction. I think maybe it's a little more ethereal or a little more, spiritual than the original game ever got. But that could just be the translation that we ended up with here in North America.
I mean, the bones fit are there. They talk a lot about the life stream and the voices of the planet and, like, spirits and, like, moving through the river and so on and so forth and life and death. I think a lot of the groundwork was laid pretty effectively, even with the, like, translation done by a single very exhausted dude. Yeah, one fucking guy, in case you want an understanding of, like, just why it reads the way it does, the 1997 version of this game. One poor guy who was just really trying his fucking best.
And for one guy, it's a remarkable achievement, really.
Yeah.
He probably had like 3 weeks to do that whole thing.
Yeah. One dude is Japanese, I bet got a lot better by the end.
All right, so like chapter 2, we also see Sephiroth, where
Yeah,
you just don't see that guy in Midgar in the original game.
well, like very, very briefly, I think at like the very end of the Midgard
Yeah.
section.
Yeah,
It's
when he steals Genova.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's another thing that gets sprinkled throughout the narrative. I'm not in love with his voice, I'll be honest. Just feels even as I say this, I realize there's a reason for it. He kind of sounds like Cloud, and I know that's probably a deliberate choice because, haha, that's gonna come up later. But
There's something weird about the mix of his voice, though. Like,
yeah,
it's a little lower than a lot of the other voices, or it kind of blends into the music in a weird way. So you're kind of like leaning forward to hear what he's got to say.
I never really had that problem, but I played with headphones more or less constantly.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But that might be an issue. But like he's very like he is kind of soft spoken, and like he speaks more with his actions, aka murder, than like anything else.
A 12-foot long sword.
Holy shit, that sword! That doesn't get less pronounced as time goes on. That's for fucking sure.
Makes a statement, that's for sure.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Side quests, chapter 3. We get some of those in the mix. How did you feel about them?
Well, I've seen a lot on the old internet that people are pissed about them, that they're very fetch questy or go to a place, do a thing, but I think they serve a very important purpose in this game in that a lot of the side quests contain a great deal of the character development. And I think, especially in Chapter 3, that's where you really start to understand what Cloud is all about and a little bit of what Tifa is all about, in that he is so awkward and just incapable of dealing with human beings, and that kind of gruff exterior or, casual ignorance of what other people think is important is not really real.
Yeah. I agree with you. I also want to take it a step further and say that like side quests in Final Fantasy games have always kind of been a vehicle or delivery system for either additional story or eventually intense challenge. There's a few that I never finished. Like I in the interest of getting the game completed in a reasonable time frame, the last round of side quests you can do before you go to the Shinra's tower, I mostly just blew off. I was like, you know what? No, fuck it. I don't care. I have things to do. I can come back to this later. And there was one that was just an absolute like no go, like at not fucking happening this run. And that was the one where you have to fight the Tonberry.
Oh.
Yeah. Because like, I know there's a way to do it, but it was one of those things where it's like, I'm in kind of a rush right now, and I don't really want to go hunting for like an instant death protection setup for my party, because otherwise this guy is not fucking happening. For people who don't know, the Tonberry is a very famous Final Fantasy villain who appears in basically every version of the game from like 7 onward. He's just an unassuming little green turtle-looking dude without a shell and with a knife and a lantern. And if he scratches your skin with that knife, you are 100% fucking dead. No negotiations whatsoever. Generally, killing him is incredibly helpful. If you can pull it off, you get like the best items in the game or like crazy amounts of experience or some shit like that. But it's always kind of a struggle. And this time so far, it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. I did do the Tonberry quest. Didn't think it was quite as hard as I expected it to be. I thought it was going to be a lot bigger challenge.
Well,
he does wreck you if you don't prepare correctly. But
yeah, if you have the instant death protection equipment, like something like that set up, then you're good to go. You can just kind of
Mm-hmm.
kick his ass. But yeah, I didn't have that, and I was like, I don't know where this is gonna be. I was like, I'm just gonna go.
Yeah. Heading back to the chapter 3 side quests, this is the place where I noticed that a lot of the textures in the game are super duper grimy.
That's really interesting because I, on my basic ass PS4, didn't notice that as profoundly. Like, it wasn't until like I think like the same day you first brought up textures and pop in to me was the first time I ever experienced pop in. And I was like 80% of the way through the game when you brought this up.
Mm-hmm.
But like before that, like it didn't even register with me that some things looked somewhat shittier than others. But I think that might be more pronounced with the PS4 Pro.
I think so.
Because it looks so crisp and clear, so like the shitty textures look even worse.
Yeah, like it was a shot that was showing, I don't know, Tifa's face or something, and the skin in this game looks photorealistic. Like if you took a picture of some skin and sent it to someone, they would tell you that is skin. But
yeah,
like just over her shoulder was a tire, which was literally an octagon. Like it was not even close to being somewhat round. And the texture looked like a PS1 texture. So I gotta assume this is a bug or something, but
yeah, I've never seen it get that bad. There was popping like one time in like Sector 5, and I was like, oh fuck, I guess it's hasn't quite caught up to what's happening here. But then it just never came up again. But it's interesting that the PS4 Pro version might have more of a like a seesaw thing happening where it like bounces back and forth between high quality and low depending on what you're looking at.
yeah, to me it kind of seemed like the beginning of the game was fine, and anywhere from the Shinra Tower onward was outstanding. But in the middle, anytime you were in the slums, at times I was looking at it like they didn't have time to optimize this whole game, so they shredded some of the texture quality to make sure that this thing ran at 30. But I could be wrong if that's not really a problem that we're seeing on the standard PS4.
It honestly, I tend to be the guy that doesn't notice these things. Like most of the time when shit goes wrong graphically, I'm like the last person you should ask. It's only when it impacts like gameplay, like I get like stutters or like jitters or skips, then I'm pretty sensitive to it. But like visually, it's really easy to like sleight of hand distract me with good shit from the bad.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't bother me in the end. Like the storytelling and the characters are the main thing that you're paying attention to. But boy, oh boy, an 8-sided tire in 2020. My God.
Yeah, that's a big mood. So other than that, in chapter 3,
I thought for sure that Cloud and Tifa were gonna bang.
there was definitely a moment where they were like going back to like private rooms. It was like, so they fucking or
And she's like, "Hey, you gonna come up, you swing by my room later?" He's like, I don't know, maybe."
everybody is pretty horny for Cloud. It's like that's fine. I get it, right? Like, tall, mysterious, carries a colossal sword. Girls are super into that. Within the context of this world, they're like, he
Yeah.
walks softly and carries a 7-foot sword. You know what that means? Something good about his dick game, apparently, because they're all lining up for it.
Yeah. It was momentary though, because in that chapter we also meet two of the strangest peripheral characters in a long time in probably pretty much any game, that being Chadley and Johnny. And
Chadley to me feels like pretty well in line for like Final Fantasy weird.
yeah,
Because like you always get those guys that's like, I somehow traverse space and time and causality to be wherever you need me to be. Just like, it's like you went on a horrifying, terrible journey to get from one part of the city to the other. I just kind of walked and it was fine for some reason. It's me, Chadley. I think there's in Final Fantasy 13, there's like a chocobo sales lady who it turned into a running joke where she could get fucking anywhere. Anywhere. You'd be like in some sort of like Z space alternate universe pocket dimension thing about to fight a boss and she just pops up. It's like, you need any items? I'm like, where the fuck did you come from?
Yeah, I half expected to see Chadley somewhere in chapter 18. Didn't happen. We'll get there.
Perilously clinging to a bit of debris, but like, in the midst of the singularity, I couldn't help notice you're a little low on items. What can I get you?
Cloud, did you manage to assess all those monsters?
Yeah.
The way he speaks is pretty fun.
Yeah.
And Johnny is just a madman. Just a madman.
Yeah, all go, no stop. That's Johnny's motto.
But yeah, I like those little tidbits. I like that he keeps coming back even though you keep telling him to get out of town.
Yeah, apparently town for him just means like that neighborhood, and it's like, I gotta flee to like one train zone over to like the next place and then keep doing dumb shit, but like, you know, that's far enough.
It's fine though. It's fine because chapter 4 brings us the bike chase.
LaRoche.
What? That is
LaRoche is so good.
That is some true anime, very Tetsuya Nomura character design and behavior.
The shit he does with that bike.
It's lull inducing, but it somehow fits the tone. I didn't find it out of place.
It's like soldiers must have incredible strength. Like Cloud, even Cloud must have to go around being careful not to accidentally crush all the bones in people's hands when he shakes them, because this guy treats that fucking bike like it's made of paper mache. He could just like fling it around like a gymnast baton over his head between his legs and shit. And like, that's not how bikes behave. What are you doing?
That's like the first instance, but it's not the last instance of someone using a motorcycle as basically a handheld weapon.
Yeah. It's like the bike fights in that episode of The Simpsons.
Yeah. Yeah, chapter 4 we get a whole bunch about Jesse, who is an absolutely nothing character in the original game, but has a big arc. Has a lot to do with how things go.
Yeah, it's kind of a big nasty death flag when she gets so much story so early. You're like, oh, I think they might kill you.
Yeah.
Like, also, like, promising to go on dates and to like make pizza for people later. It's like, you just pulled out your wallet and showed us pictures of your kids, you fucking moron. We're never gonna see you again.
She is a total Star Trek red shirt.
She is one day away from retirement. That's what she is. It's fucking bad.
But a fascinating character. The backstory about being an actress at the Gold Saucer, and you kind of see some of that in her interactions with people and being, you know, very theatrical and wanting Cloud to think that they were gonna bang.
Yeah, how Wedge is like, it's just a game to her, man. Don't get sucked into that. It's not gonna go the way you think it is.
Yeah. But I like the scene at Jesse's mom's house when you're just like creeping around her critically ill father. That's some good powerful stuff.
Oh, it's very powerful, and you like get snippets of conversation from them in the background as you're moving through the house, and it's just like, look at these people trying to have a normal life while you're like breaking and entering, and like it also acts as a really clever juxtaposition where like Cloud is separated in a significant fashion from a semblance of a normal life.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, it really hammers home how abnormal his upbringing and his personality and his like general existence is from like even the rest of his like teammates or whatever.
Yeah, I think for someone who hadn't played the original game, scenes like that are what generate curiosity about Cloud's backstory.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering that along the way, how people were gonna identify with this story, not knowing, or over the course of this game, never knowing a lot of the backstory.
Yeah.
And is it still hitting? And it seems like it is hitting for people.
Yeah. I think absolutely. I really wish that Wedge had gotten more backstory about cats and less backstory about pizza. I super don't appreciate how his whole character arc is just like, man, I sure do love food. I'm like, fuck off. He's a revolutionary with like a heart and soul and like a fucking history of volunteer work, and is just like a good neighbor and a good dude. He takes care of animals. You know what I mean? Like I just wish there had been fewer beats where it's like, oh man, I sure love food. I'm like, we know, all right, he's got pizza belly. It's fine. We can tell. We understand that maybe he, you know, eats more than he should. That we don't need like every fucking third line to be out of his mouth about like, gotta fuel up. I'm like, fuck off.
He does also have the opportunity to get some more character development in a future installment, though. Whereas, Jesse was kind of compacted in there.
Yeah, it's good that like the people that we didn't see much of, we're gonna get a chance to see more of later. Also, I don't know if I brought this up before. I probably did, but just one more time for the people in the back. Biggs is basically a young Charlie Sheen.
He is
and it
a dead
weirds
ringer.
me out.
Dead ringer.
Yeah. Even like the bandana is just like, is this just Hot Shots Part 2? Like, it's like that character model, but with like better hair. It's fucking spooky. Even the guy who's the guy that got to do the voice is like it's like Charlie Sheen with like turned down a couple of notches.
Yeah, a little bit actually.
It's fascinating.
Huh. Well, I hope he gets some more story, because he's a bit of a plank of wood at this point.
They allude to him being interesting later on.
Yeah. Yeah.
But real time in the mix, you don't get a lot about him. You don't get quite as much as you want to about Wedge, but they do give us the opportunity to get into that later.
Another thing I think they're going to get into later, and they have to because it's a giant story change, is Avalanche is not just Barrett's crew. It is a giant, well-funded, lots of equipment organization where Barrett and co are kind of the fringe group because they don't follow the rules.
Which is interesting to me because it makes me want to know what the main cell of Avalanche does that is still effective revolutionary work while not being too extreme. You know what I mean? Like, what are they doing that like still qualifies them as a revolutionary army while not making the headlines in the news? Like, are they just like a mercenary branch of the Wu-Tai military? Like, what is their purpose within the larger narrative?
Yeah, I mean, that's the Shinra propaganda narrative, is that they are associated with Wu-Tai. I wouldn't be surprised if that turned out to be the case.
There is a line within the story where Barrett alludes to the larger Avalanche group taking Wu-Tai's money and supplies. So there's a nugget of truth to that. Like, the propaganda's not complete bullshit. which is probably what makes it so effective. Like, especially if like Wutai has like specific kinds of uniforms or guns, even, and they're like, you see other Avalanche members using those same weapons. It's like, well, fuck, maybe they are just like Wutai's dogs, you know?
Yeah, it bodes well for future installments because, like,
Sure does.
in the original game, you don't even have to go to Wutai.
Yeah, that never has to be a thing at all. And exciting possibilities for Yuffie's character development, who is just one of my favorites in the original, and I can't wait to fucking meet her.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, chapter 5.
Chapter 5, I mean, 5 and 6 are basically just traversal.
Yeah.
But Chapter 5 is the first time I heard Barrett yell the victory fanfare, and fuck me, was that awesome.
So good. Yeah.
So good. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about those two chapters. It's good traversal and puzzle solving, and
Yeah, it's good gameplay, not fun to talk about. Chapter 7, I notice you have a note about us reaching maximum Barrett. If you care to elaborate on that, that would be great.
Well, we're inside the reactor, and even after, it's very clear that they have been caught. Heidegger is way ahead of them, and he's watching and broadcasting. Barrett won't quit. He's busy spouting about the planet, yelling into cameras, just going absolutely berserk at all times, every opportunity, and it's amazing from top to bottom. It's a super long segment when you're trying to climb back out of the bottom of the reactor there, but
Yeah.
like, just maximum Barrett. And I couldn't be happier when it was happening.
Yeah, that's an excellent performance once again. It's just really showing the range of the character.
And yeah, that train was really rolling. It wasn't gonna stop, and everybody else who's in attendance is very aware that they're not going to be able to cool him down. The match has lit the candle, and it is burning.
Holy shit.
What did you think about that Airbuster fight? Do you have trouble with that one?
I think that was a very skin of the teeth kind of fight, where like I had one person alive at the very end with about 15 health, and I just happened to get off like a limit break or like a super move right at the end to like knock his ass down and be done with it. I think when I won that one, it wasn't by a wide margin.
Yeah. Same here.
Chapter 8 is where we get into the Turks and we get into Aerith. Chapter 8 has a very short sequence of about 5 minutes of Aerith and Cloud walking across a set of rooftops. And there's so much character development poured into that little section that manages to feel pretty organic. And it's an exceptional piece of storytelling.
It's absurdly cute how Aerith just pokes at Cloud, which is, it's kind of what happens in the original game too, but it's much more personable here, and you can really identify with Aerith in this case. And I've said this before, that since the original game came out, because I was like 12 years old at the time, I was fully Team Tifa. But I might be on Team Aerith now. Actually, she's pretty rad.
Yeah, no, she really shines, particularly in this chapter. And it's interesting how you managed to get so much of her character without getting much into her backstory. You know, like we don't get any of the like her lineage or her heritage or her history, but we still learn what feels like a lot about her, which I found fascinating.
Yeah, it gets more into her actions as a person in the context of Midgar.
Yeah.
Which you don't really get in the original game. And, like, she's growing the flowers for the lady at the orphanage, and she's helping out the warden of the slums, or whatever that character is called. Yeah. And the way she deals with the Turks, too, I think that's pretty interesting that she's so nonchalant about these complete badasses chasing her.
Yeah, I it's interesting. It feels almost implausible until you learn later that they can't take her forcefully.
Mm-hmm.
That like for their plans, she can't be coerced. She has to go willingly. And so it really like it lends credence to her like complete bravado when it comes to like or bravado rather when it comes to like her dealings with the Turks. Where it's just like, oh yeah, no, she knows damn well that they can't do anything to her, so she's very bold.
And yet she's more than willing to let Cloud fight a death-defying match against Reno and then later against Rude, knowing full well that, you know, it's meaningless.
That fucking fight where Rude like picks you up, spins you around, and throws you into the other player. Oh, so good.
Yeah, he goes full 1980s WWF. Yeah.
Let's spend a little time on chapter 9.
Oh. What a midpoint.
Holy shit.
It goes so many places. And like we have 6 or 7 points here, and that's not even close to all the things that go down and are worth talking about in chapter 9.
Okay, so the dance sequence is amazing. It's beautiful. I like went back and watched some of it afterwards. I was like, wow, that's really well crafted. Cloud has moves even when you, the player, do not.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because it makes absolutely no sense for Cloud to be doing that. And yet, I found it tremendously delightful. You know, like why does he just suddenly realize that he has to do this to get into the mansion? Or does something else like just overtake him?
Maybe he's like, even though he's like a rebellious ex-soldier, kind of like, you can't tell me what to do. Maybe under the certain circumstances, you can tell him what to do. And all of his like military training is still very much there. So when somebody's like, all right, I'm a lead and you follow, he's actually really good at it.
I mean, the sequence speaks for itself. It's incredible. There's just so much going on. And I so desperately wanted to watch the dancing that I missed a lot of prompts, just not even seeing that they were happening. And kind of the midpoint of the dance, Aerith gives some feedback on how well you're doing. And in my game, I'd missed quite a few in a row, and she kind of just went,
Yeah. She gets this look like, oh, look at him. I definitely know him. We came in together.
At the end, her comment was, well, you tried.
Yeah. Same. So I ended up with pigtails and a full-length purple dress for Cloud. Kind of weird that so few people recognize him when it is just Cloud in pigtails and a dress. It's not like, oh, look at that pretty lady. It's like that boy looks really pretty, but it's definitely Cloud. But Tifa doesn't quite recognize him at first, or she pretends not to. I honestly couldn't tell which. I gave her the benefit of the doubt, assumed she was just playing it up, but it really seemed genuine. Like she had no idea this was Cloud, which speaks volumes about her capacity to like recognize things when they're in front of her. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so you got the purple like bodice dress for Cloud. Where did you end up on the other characters?
Aerith was in like some sort of like red cocktail dress with like high heels. She looked infinitely better than Cloud did, that's for sure.
Hell yeah, she did.
Jesus Christ. That whole chapter 9 sequence with Tifa and Aerith. Just really, I honestly couldn't tell if the camera was lingering in certain places or that was just me. Like, if, like, you know what I mean? Like, if the male gaze was just me doing that, or if, like, the art direction was reinforcing this. Like, I legitimately can't cast back in my memories and tell you one way or another how those shots actually looked because I was hopelessly distracted.
Mhm. I mean, I think the cinematography work throughout the game is very focused on highlighting certain parts of people, whether that is a male gaze thing, but at times it's like a super close up of someone's nose and mouth when they're talking, or it's like their hands, balling up into a fist, or things like that. It uses extreme close ups to kind of communicate emotion a lot of the time.
Yeah, it isn't quite equal opportunity, but I did get a lot of chances to count some chest hairs on Barrett, and that's something. Not a lot of none of the guys wear very flattering pants.
Yeah.
If that's the sort of thing that you're like hoping for, you're like, it's like I don't know what Cloud's ass looks like really, and I don't know if I ever will. I mean, there's definitely going to be a swimsuit episode, so to speak, of this game
Mhm.
pretty soon, and maybe that'll be the chance for the directors to rectify this. But I have a feeling it's just going to be more long, lingering shots of the girls.
If I had to guess about Cloud, based on his performance in the squatting minigame, in my situation anyway, he's probably got buns of steel.
Yeah, I
That
think
boy
man
can
was like
squat.
28 or something, 28 or 29. It was just like probably got like an ass like a
Like chiseled
yeah,
from marble.
yeah, chisel from Marvel. Like, but he's got really like spindly little arms, so I don't know.
They contain a lot of strength, though. You see how he handles
It's
that
true.
sword.
Yeah, it's true.
Um,
Uh, I think the only other thing I really want to bring up for my purposes is the hand massage sequence,
it's
which
so good.
like now we know what Cloud looks like when he fucks. Like that's information that I have in my brain forever. Good or bad, it's there. I
Yeah, I just love the way it's directed. That it obscures a lot of the hand massaging and leaves it just suggestive enough that it could be other things happening. And
the only reason we know that she's not blowing him is because she talks throughout it. Like like that's it. Other than that, he could be getting like
he could be getting down.
yeah, he could be getting the hottest blowy of his life based on his facial expressions.
Did you spring for the 3,000 gil version?
Yes, of course I
Of course.
did.
Of course.
How many times am I gonna go back to that place in game? Live large while you can, man.
I kind of wonder what the less expensive ones are like. Is it like, a high five and a firm handshake, or what?
Yeah, we'd certainly know less about Cloud's O face. I can tell you that much right now.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple other things to note is just how incredible Don Corneo's design is.
Yeah,
The way that hair flips around and the way they have implemented jiggle physics on his gut. So good.
yeah, he's a capering little goblin. It's pretty incredible.
Capering. Yep, no doubt. And the arena sequence. So glad that's in this. That's something I felt like I was gonna miss, not being able to go to Gold Saucer in
Yeah,
this part of the game. But they got it in there.
Hell House was a fucking slog. I that took some work to
Yeah.
get through that fight. That was brutal.
I was undeniably excited though when I realized it was, oh my god, that house enemy.
Yeah, like you'd think too goofy to be in the new game. No, not at all.
Especially
Nothing
not
is
in
too
Chapter
goofy
9.
for Final Fantasy VII. Holy shit.
Yeah. Okay, moving along. Chapter 10, more traversal, except for that Don Corneo's pet boss, Abzu.
Yeah, chapter 10, I guess, is not when he gets the worst. Like chapter 10 is the preview version of Abzu. It isn't until like later in the game when you fight him and it is the worst, the fucking worst fight. But yeah,
Mm.
you get that, you get the sewer exploration. You have to do you have to do that dumbass fucking sequence where you're like chasing that oh no, that's later too. Shit. There's one too many sewer sections. All right, I'm getting them mixed up. Okay. So chapter 10, sewers, it sucks. Chapter 11, ghosts. Um
I love this
and
chapter.
yeah, Aerith can talk to ghosts. Ghosts are about um important information about her character, I guess. Uh some
Yeah,
like
you finally
weird
get a little bit of like childhood backstory for
yeah,
Aerith.
for Aerith and what it was like growing up and that it sucked in some ways. And the ghost fights were tough enough, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
Hey, so this reminds me of a quick little aside. Everybody in the original game, Barrett was the guy who did all the swearing and the cussing. In this version, it's like everybody a little bit, like Aerith saying shit as shit like lands kind of funny as she gets like knocked down or whatever in this one sequence. I was like, that threw me for a bit of a loop. I was like, oh, really? She's got a bit of a mouth on her. What do you know? That's crazy.
Hmm. I didn't notice that. Is that's in the train graveyard?
No, it's actually way before. I just didn't remember. I didn't think of it until now.
Oh.
That like, it's when it's in chapter 8. The when you first meet her and she's like fighting with the Turks and they're like running around that abandoned church. She like lands and does a barrel roll or whatever and like she's like shit. And I was just like, what really? Oh, okay. And separately, somebody else who swears a bit more than I thought he would was Cloud, who tries to incorporate it into his like pithy one-liners before battles, and sometimes it just sounds so awkward, like he's never used the word before.
That's so Cloud though. That's
It's
everything
so
he says.
good.
It's like he's never said it before. That kind of reminds me of chapter 8 again, when he's getting to know Aerith and they're working their way through the collapsed expressway, and she wants a high five, and he's like, "Oh my god, it's a hand." What? Maybe that's
Yeah, it's
because he knows it's the key to his happy O place.
yeah.
But
It takes them like 4 tries to get a high five right, and then later, like the next scene, Tifa and Aerith do it in one, and it's just like, that's right, Cloud.
mhm.
You don't know what you're doing.
You clown,
It's so good.
you absolute joke.
There's one fight where just before it starts, like Cloud says something like, "Time to time to take you down, bitch," and it's just like, do you know how that word is used? Like, what was that?
It's all fine though, because they all end up at the Sector 7 pillar trying to save it from destruction. How do you feel
Yeah,
about
that
that whole
chapter.
segment?
That chapter was heartbreaking. The
Yeah.
the pillar when they're climbing up it and people are like dying and like collapsing and like terrified townspeople and they're like, oh, the whole pillar collapse is just like fucking heartbreaking. Just like you get the human cost, you see these people doing their slightly protracted death speeches that 2 out of 3 times aren't actually death speeches. Um,
I like
and
that.
then like, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I like that they included a piece with Aerith going to pick up Marlene and kind of seeing what things are like in Sector 7 while the whole battle's going on.
Yeah, and the deal that she makes with Sang. Um, yeah, no, that was a good sequence. It really had a lot of heart. I really appreciated it, even as it hurt me.
Yeah, I think that's the first point in the game where I was not happy to be fighting a certain kind of enemy. And that is those fucking heli troopers. Fuck those guys. I hate them.
Yeah, they're not they're not great. I had a couple of bad runs with them. Once you get Barrett back, then they don't matter, but when it's just you and another melee person,
Mhm.
it's kind of hopeless.
They just kind of stun lock you into this repetitive chopping motion and But anyways, you get to the top and you fight the Turks again. Great battle.
Yeah, I really like the Turk fight. I like how fighting the Turks feels mechanically different than fighting other enemies.
Mm-hmm.
There's things you have to worry about. There's things you think about sometimes, but that are brought to the forefront, like blocking and dodging and like timing of your attacks. All of that like takes on a very different feeling when you're fighting the Turks.
Yeah, and from a game design perspective, I really like how they kind of set you up for this moment. They let you fight Reno, they let you fight Rude, and then, you know, you get up to the roof and you see them both in the chopper and you're like, well, I'm obviously going to have to fight both these guys, and you have some expectation of how that's going to go, but then it's twisted just enough that it still puts you on your heels.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really great battle design in this game.
Yes. Yes, they did an excellent job. Chapter 13.
The plate has
Is
fallen.
Yeah. You've got the like Barrett sections where you're controlling him because everybody gets separated, I guess, and then you have to like recollect everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just a lot of like shooting things. Just a lot of shooting things with Barrett. Just a lot of shooting.
I mean, to be honest, it's a thing I've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I got to do it. I shot rocks. They exploded in funny ways. I shot through walls. I shot when there was nothing to shoot because I could, and I was Barrett. And that was amazing.
The breaking down the barriers thing, that's the first hint that maybe the physics engine doesn't always behave the way they want it to.
Yes. The way the rocks
There's
bounces.
Did you... Well, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but in Shinra Tower, there's like that break room with all the chairs around the tables.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I spent a good 4 minutes just running around, knocking over every single chair, and they made like the loudest noise possible, and they're like dragging behind you. Oh, it was so good.
I also like if you're running around as Cloud and you miss all the chairs, Tifa and Barrett still like crash through everything. Like there is no sneaking happening.
No, absolutely not. No chance.
But that's another big adjustment in the story of this game is the secret lab itself. It exists, and there's some hints that, you know, maybe more characters and monsters than you think have been at one time or another in the secret lab being experimented on with the blood of the ancients and whatever.
Yeah, I do kind of wonder about that, and I have some theories. I don't know if this is backed up or if people have already thought of this or what, but I have a feeling that Sephiroth and Aerith might be slightly related. Because, like, I'm pretty sure Aerith was born in that lab, and I know that Sephiroth was. And we never hear about more than one pure-blooded ancient. So... Were they made the same way? Like, are they of a similar age? Like, I think Sephiroth might be a couple of years older, but not much.
Hojo does spend a lot of time talking about breeding the ancient.
Yeah. Hojo, by the way, is the new version. I love him so much in this version of the game. His performance is exemplary. Um, just the way his facial expressions and the way they correspond to like certain ticks in his voice and like his like cold-hearted glee at like all the various things he does and how like nothing really feels like a setback. Anyways, we're jumping around. Chapters 14 through 16, just they're cool. They happen. It's crazy. You get into it.
One question for chapter 16. Did you take the elevator or did you run up the 59 floors?
The elevator.
Oh, I ran up the floors.
Okay, cool. What happens there? What's the difference?
So in the original game, it's a huge slog, and you're just repetitively pushing buttons, but there's a lot of funny dialogue and interesting character moments that happen on that staircase. And that is the case here as well.
Nice.
You see a full range of emotions and see the deterioration of Barrett's psychological state as you climb the floors. I mean, you start out and you've got your full-on sprint, but by the time you get to like the 30th floor, even Cloud is incapable of going faster than a walk. But at one point, Barrett gets this second wind and starts really motoring along and yelling, because of course he's always yelling. And it's I would recommend going back to chapter 16 just to climb up the stairs.
Oh, I think I might do that actually. That sounds great. I really appreciated that section.
It is. It's very fun. It
was so good.
I think the parking garage in that chapter is one of the hardest sections in the whole game. It's super challenging with all the super soldiers finally showing up and casting magic all the time. That was a tough spot.
Yeah, I ran into a couple of snags there. Most of my like big hitches were in like boss fights. Like there were some boss fights I had to try like 7 or 8 times just before I could get the rhythm of it and figure out who had to be where at what time. So chapter 17, a lot of shit goes down. A lot of shit. This is where the story starts getting kind of squirrely, and us veterans who know the original are starting to really scratch our heads and not fully grip what's happening.
Yeah.
There's a fake out moment where I was pretty sure that they'd killed Barrett, and that was a heavy thing to just have on your plate for a hot minute.
I appreciate that they let it linger a little. He wasn't immediately saved. He was dead for a good long while. And
the fact that he comes back, narratively very important, because it's the Whispers who are like correcting the story and making sure that it happens a certain way.
Yes. I'm not sure that really hit me at that moment when I was playing it.
No.
But later in chapter 18, looking back, yeah.
There's a lot of things about the Whispers and their role that dawned on me very slowly.
Yeah. It's fascinating. And I get why people aren't super happy with it, but I think it's a good way to go.
To me, it's because like the game introduces, both the original and this new version, several planetary defense systems. Basically, the planet kicking up and being like, no, this is how things are supposed to happen, and I'm going to do what I can to make sure it does. So, like, the Whispers are one, Meteor is another one, and the weapons as well. And I find that the Whispers kind of, like, nicely segment in to be, like, just another way for them to, like, figure that shit out.
Yeah. Yeah, actually. Huh. I haven't thought about that.
And, Sephiroth, but, like, that's a whole separate discussion.
So there's a lot of chapter 17 that happens in and around Hojo's labs, which are far larger than you would think could be contained in that building. but apparently they are. And there's a lot of great gameplay in there, and a lot of interesting ways that they mix and match the characters to see how they perform together and apart. I really enjoyed that section.
Yeah, I appreciated all the segments with Hojo. I had a pretty reasonable time getting through the dungeony stuff. I think Scarlet probably has a sex dungeon. She gives off a real S&M vibe in the one cutscene we see her in. Like, really, like this lady owns several whips.
Oh yeah, undoubtedly.
She uses a dude as a footstool. It's pretty wild.
And he's clearly terrified.
Yeah, he is.
Like, is this stool at the right height? Because I may get a whipping.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm scared I might like it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a hell of a thing. Holy cow.
Yeah, I can't wait to see more out of Scarlet and Palmer and even Heidegger. I'm so glad they kept his ridiculous laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And while all the Scarlet stuff was happening, I was like, is she, quote unquote, the hottest character in the game? And I had that kind of lingering in my brain until later in chapter 17 when Rufus shows up, and I'm like, whoa. This guy's just a stud.
Rufus he's gunning for like Lulu from Final Fantasy X's title of the beltiest. Like, holy shit, the belt situation of that man. It's a lot to handle. Like, when he has to like take off that coat, does he need an assistant? Like, it's fucking crazy.
Man's got to have buckle options, James.
He has all of them simultaneously with that coat. It's incredible.
Yeah. That said, I kind of think that Rufus fight sucks. Not because I found it difficult. I think it was fine difficulty-wise. I thought it was annoying, and there wasn't really a strategy that was like, this is the strategy you're supposed to use. You can kind of do whatever you want, and you'll get through it. But, you know,
it's basically like, just use all your special moves and then get him to like a quarter of his health or less, and then he just becomes mostly invincible, and you're just waiting for another special move, and then you use that on him, and then you win the fight. And like, that's not great, but I mean, I guess they had to make it achievable because it's just you fighting him, so they have to like tweak and mess with the difficulty.
Yeah, I guess. But I mean, I thought the Roche duel earlier in the game was great.
Yeah.
But they kind of threw a lot of that mechanical, oh yes, you can counter and parry and do things to make this fight make sense. You couldn't really do that with Rufus. You're just kind of evading around until he decided to reload, and you could use triple slash on him.
Okay, so let's spend a few minutes on the end and the ending.
Let's indeed.
So the Sephiroth boss fight is a complete fuckfest. The Destiny fight is a complete fuckfest. So this is a pretty big deal. You are working to alter the destiny laid out by the planet, aka the plot of Final Fantasy VII. The planet remembers how that PS1 version of the game went and is very interested in it going that same way, and you and Sephiroth have a difference of opinion in this and have decided that you want things to go a little differently, and so you literally go kick Destiny's ass, and I guess that means that it doesn't have to go that way anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, you do see the whispers completely disappear.
Yeah.
So perhaps that safety net is now not there. It kind of leaves the door open for things that did not happen before to happen now.
So on that note, I'm not clear. Is Zack still alive, or was that just a flashback? Because he makes like he's talking to Cloud, and like that makes it seem less like it was happening in real time. But like everything I've seen online is like, oh yeah, no, Zack is super alive. And what was the impression you got from those scenes?
So the impression I got from that scene specifically is that we have changed history because the bag of chips floats past and Stamp is a different breed of dog.
Yes, that's a big point. That's very important.
And
It's kind of a small detail, but like they pay enough attention to Stamp throughout the game that you're like led to see this in a certain way, and the fact that it does happen the way it happens is very telling.
and Zack is clearly alive there. They make a big deal of the fact that he is alive when Cloud gets to Midgar. But
Yeah.
Cloud also has his sword. And the way Aerith refers to Zack earlier in the game is very much a remembrance, or it kind of acknowledges that at least she believes that he's dead. But also that could be
Yeah.
because we haven't defeated the Whispers yet.
Yeah. Which, I mean, if there's repercussions in the past and future, then fuck me, that's not great. I think that in itself, narrative wise, represents kind of a threat to the planet almost as much as Sephiroth is.
Yeah, I think, yeah. I don't think they can't go too far. Like, they can't change the Nibelheim scenario too much. It's just people have
Yeah.
too much reverence for that whole thing. Again, we gave you spoiler warnings, but like the burning town and all the Sephiroth events that happen there.
Nibelheim has to play out the way it does in order for Sephiroth to even exist in this form in the game.
That's true.
Like he has to, again, spoiler town, he has to die in Nibelheim in order for this all to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real mindfuck of where they can go with this. I remember thinking as I finished the game, in the original game, like right now, we would just head off to that town, Calm or whatever it's called, and just carry on. But now there are no rules.
Yeah, I feel like calm has to happen anyways because we need to sit down for a fucking hour or more and do the exposition that is the backstory of Nibelheim.
Yeah.
But like, looking forward to that info dump.
One of the things I found most interesting, and it just kind of hit me in Chapter 18, is that it seems that Aerith is very aware of her destiny, or the destiny that the planet wants her to have.
Yeah, we'll give you that impression. Like, I know Cloud has been seeing visions of it for most of the game, but like,
It's very subtle. Like, she doesn't say anything specific, but anytime she's talking about the future or talking about destiny, she kind of gets this sort of sad or despondent look on her face and kind of, says it in a low tone. I just very much got the impression that she knows she's destined to, spoiler town, die.
yeah, that'll be interesting if they decide to fuck with that, because I feel like that was a big part of the elevated motivation for the game, or like for Cloud rather. You know how it was just like, first you take Nibelheim and my mom and the town and threaten the planet, and then you kill this girl that I like. Fuck you, man. I'm gonna murder you back. Like, I feel like without that, we're gonna have to like rewrite a lot of his motivations for like how he works and what he does.
I think this would probably be a little too obvious of a route to take. If they acknowledge that, yes, we know what the destiny of the planet was meant to be, and yes, Aerith was supposed to die, now let's take steps to correct that and make sure it doesn't happen. and I could see them killing off Cloud instead. Like, he just dies.
Well, it could be like a fake out thing, because fucking Sephiroth dies, and then well, I don't know if the planet or Genova brings him back. I honestly can't remember which, but it's decided that it's important for him to be around, and so they bring his ass back, and the very same thing could happen to Cloud.
Yeah.
He could get a sword through the neck, and then everybody's really sad, and then he gets spat up out of the live stream, and it's just like, how you doing, buddy? In fact, that whole scene where he's like comatose and in a wheelchair and like not really a person could very easily work with him being like remade by the planet in the live stream. It's just like, he needs a little more time in the oven,
Yeah. Or, I mean, could go down the route of, yes, we've rejected destiny, but it's going to come to the same end point regardless.
Yeah. Like she like falls on a rock or something and like
gets an insidious
breaks her
like
neck.
broken ankle, and it gets all infected, and it's a whole thing. It's really sad.
Stage 4 lung cancer. I don't know. Just like something happens that kills her anyway.
I knew I should have given up Mako sticks years ago.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say. I think it's a smart route to take, to at least give us the impression that the future is not set.
Yeah, so even if it is set and they're like just fucking with us, at least we'll spend the next year or two, debating, wondering, worrying, thinking about the game, keeping it in the zeitgeist in some form. And then, when it turns out it's been the same shit all along, we're like, you got us, guys.
And you know what? It was a great ride.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Even that would be fine.
Yeah. What did you score this game? 95? Is that right?
95.
Yeah.
I took points off because there's definitely some Final Fantasy type, tropey, RPG type stuff that is still going to drive people nuts. It's still got some problems, little bits of like the pop-in stuff, like you said, and the way the AI is not the brightest bulbs in the box, and that sort of thing. But like, it's minor infractions. It's not like capital offenses by any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, 95 out of 100, easy score.
Yeah, I think I would have scored it about the same, unless we were on a 10-point scale where you could only go with whole numbers. Then it's probably a 10.
Yeah. If we're having a less nuanced discussion, probably sneaks into a 10 out of 10. But like, turned up the microscope, it's actually a 9.5. Yeah.
So yeah, that's Final Fantasy VII Remake. That's our thoughts. James, we've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah. Oops. So yeah. Thanks for taking this journey with us. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed the game. Even if you didn't, it was a ride.
Yeah, let us know what you think in the comments.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave a note in the description that the comments are a definite spoil zone. So if you have thoughts on anything that we've said, go ahead, throw them down in the comments, and we'll do our best to read everything.
Yeah, sound off. We'll check it out. We want to see what's up. What do you think? Did you hate it? Did you love it? Where are you at?
Who's the hottest character?
Who's the hottest character? Yeah, please weigh in on that one, if nothing else.